In this lesson, we are going to make some final changes and prepare the application for release. We will start by configuring the app settings in our config.xml file, and then we'll remove any unused code to optimize the application. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's open the config.xml file. So here we have the config.xml file, and the first thing we'll change is the ID that is defined right here. This is the application identifier that identifies your application across all the applications on the Google Play Store and even on Apple App Store. So you need to change it to something that represents your organization and identifies this application uniquely across all applications. The general rule for this identifier is to use the reverse domain naming. For example, com.pact, which represents the organization behind this application, followed by the name of the application. For this application, it can be To-Do app. So the whole identifier becomes com.pact.todo app. This is the identifier that will identify this application across all applications on Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Another property that you want to modify is the version. As of now, you can see that the default value of the version is 0.0.1. So we'll change it to something more meaningful, and we'll change it to 1.0.0, which means that this is the first version of this application. As you create and release updates for this application, make sure to increase the version number. Next, we'll change the name of the application, and for that we'll have to change the text between the name tags. This is the name that will be displayed on the user's device when they install your application. So we'll change it to To-Do app as well. Finally, you can add a little bit of description in the description tags. In the author tag, you can change the email property to represent something that the users will use to contact the developers for support. So here I'll just go ahead and type in an email, and let's call it support@pact.com. Similarly, you can go ahead and change the website right here. So let's change it to pact.com. Finally, I'll change the name of the author to Pact Team. If you are an individual developing this application, you can go ahead and type in your name right here. And that's pretty much all the changes that you need to make to your config.xml file before you build your application for release. So now that the changes to config.xml file are done, you can close this file. And before we start building this application, make sure that you do not have any imports in your files that you do not use. So go to each of your files one by one. And here, if any of the imports are not used, they will be shown in a grayed out color by Visual Studio Code. So you can go ahead and remove those imports. Removing the unused imports optimizes your application and also reduces the size of the bundle that is created after building your application. As of now, in this application, we do not have any unused code. We only have the bare minimum code that we need for this application to work. One last thing that I want to mention is that make sure that you remove any plugins that you are not using. As of now, we have not installed any additional plugins to this application. So these are the 6 plugins that are used by every Ionic application. So we do not need to remove any of these plugins. If you have installed any plugins, and if you are not using any plugins, make sure you remove those plugins before you build your application. So now that everything is good, we can now go ahead and build this application for Android. So in the next lesson, we'll learn how we can build this application for release on Android.